sure you'll be able to extrapolate and apply maybe some principles for your church here and your own walk with Jesus, because you know that Jesus has told you, not the church, Jesus has told you to go into all the world and make disciples. And that worries me. I think to myself, man, what am I doing? Am I making disciples? Am I obeying Jesus? And doing all that I possibly can to reach lost people with the good news of the gospel. In our church in Australia, Jay and I took over this small church, 30, 40 people, nearly 20 years ago. We grew that church to over 500 people. We saw 1,000 people give their lives to Jesus in church on a Sunday morning, which is really, really rare in Australia. It doesn't happen. We're such a secular country where we are not very religious. People just worship money and houses and cars and experiences and holidays, and that's what everybody seems to be pursuing. You know, if you're Christian, if you're born again Christian, percentage is 23% in reality. In Australia, it's about 9 or 10%. And so our church, so many people come to Christ. Every 3 years in Australia, there's the National Church Life Survey. It's funded by the government, and they survey every church. Every church in Australia stops for 30 minutes once every 3 or 4 years, and they fill out a survey form all about the church life of Australia. And twice, our church was highlighted in all of Australia as a lighthouse church for evangelism, because we've reached so many people for Christ through personal evangelism. We have a lot of churches that seem to grow and grow large. So much of it is transfer growth. It seems like a lot of the church in Australia, it's just a church will have, better music, better buildings, better lighting, better productions, better sound system, better, bigger, better. And it just attracts Christians, and all of a sudden they'll say, our church is now 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, but it's just Christians moving because for a more comfortable experience often. And sadly, so often, if they're in a large church of 2,000 or 3,000, they don't have to be on a roster. They don't have to teach Sunday school. They don't have to, and it's just a comfortable life. And I love the picture Pastor Joe shared the other morning, I think during prayer, about the salt shaker. And just that picture of us, the church, the salt shaker. But it seems like in Australia, we just got better salt shakers, and they're shinier. And who's got the shiniest salt shaker? Let's make our salt shaker bigger, or let's make ours out of gold or marble. And how big's your salt shaker? How big's your salt shaker? How beautiful, how shiny is your salt shaker? And there's nothing wrong with being shiny. I'm not trying to say anything against having good music, good lights and all that. But the salt shaker actually has to be turned upside down and shaken over the food, or else it's just a decoration on the table. And that's what has to happen with our lives. Not the church, but us as Christians. We have to turn our life upside down at times. It's inconvenient. It's uncomfortable. I don't really want to do it. It's going to cost me something. Some of the salt is going to come out. It's going to cost me something. But that's what Jesus has told us and reminded us to do. We grew our church with a very simple vision statement. A lot of churches have amazing vision statements. It's the worldwide intergalactical outreach center for human beings and aliens and Martians, and we are going to change the universe. And it's written on everything, but nobody cares less because it's just words. But in our church, we just had a simple vision of friends bring friends to church and they get saved. That's how it works. That's all we did. Nothing big and holy and spiritual and powerful, just friends bring friends to church and they get saved. That's how it works. I was sharing, because of our church reaching so many people in Australia, I've had many invitations to preach and teach in churches about evangelism. And I was sharing a whole lot of stories one day on a Sunday morning service about, getting people saved. And we've reached, as I share already, gangsters and bikies and drug addicts, the biggest drug dealers, two of the biggest drug dealers in Australia. They have massive drug problems. They grow marijuana, $18 million crop of marijuana out the back of Box Harbour. The man came and got saved in our church. Other drug dealers, we've reached these people just because we're just not scared of them, not intimidated, but realising these people's lives are a disaster because they are a disaster. They are so needy. They're not into drugs and crime and all that sort of things because they're so tough and strong. They're so weak. And they're so sad. And they're so empty. And they so need Jesus so much. And they're so easy to witness to. They're so easy to befriend. Because no one befriends them. They don't have friends. It's so easy to have a coffee, buy them lunch, go to the movies with them. It's amazing. These people they just don't, they need friends. And I was sharing and preaching one Sunday morning in church in Sydney about these people getting saved and witnessing to people on aeroplanes and doing all these things. And at the end of the service, this young man came up to me and he's just like shaking his head. And he's asking this most profound question, of which I gave him a very profound answer. And he said to me, "How come you've got so many stories about witnessing?" And I said, "Because I witness." End of story. And it's like Jane. Jane has so many stories about miraculous healings. Praying for a lady that got hit by a car in the middle of the street. And she walks up and there's all the people around crying and that. And Jane sees the lady and the husband's crying and she's screaming, laying on the ground, pain in her legs, pain in her stomach. Jane politely says to her husband, "I'm a Christian, can I pray for your wife?" He goes, "Yes, that would be good." And Jane just goes, "Shakarabakushan," and everybody else goes, "Wah! What's happening?" But then all of a sudden the lady starts going, "Oh, there's movement in my stomach. What's happening? What's happening? Oh, my leg's straightening. Oh." And then the ambulance came and she got taken off to the hospital. And Jane followed it up and rang up the hospital. We found out the lady got to the hospital. She's totally healed. There's nothing wrong with her. Same question. Jane, how come you've got so many stories about praying for people and seeing miracles? Because I pray for people. It's really simple, isn't it? Yeah. We all seem to be waiting for something. Jesus, please, just one more, just do something, fall on me, Holy Spirit, And even if that's how it did work, how would we know that it had happened? Is like a t-shirt going to fall from heaven and now it's going, healer, evangelist, or, a badge or something from heaven. And now you are... No. It just happens because we get out of the boat and walk, which is Matthew 14. Just going to read it. Matthew 14, 22. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. When he had sent the multitudes away, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. That's a great picture, because that's our life. We're in the boat, we're doing our life, we're at church, but there's storms all around us, isn't it? There's storms of life. And too often we're just focused on the storms of life. I want to do this, but I've got so much hassle, and I want to witness, and I really want to be friend. I want to help that person across the street, and I want to invite them to dinner. One day I will, but right now, the dog's sick and vomiting, or, I've got problems with my own children, and we just continually focus on the storms. Let me tell you a secret. We're going to have storms. We're all going to have storms and problems, and not enough money, and sick kids, and not enough time, and cars broken, and the washing machine doesn't work. We're going to have that our whole life. That's just life. There's so many depressed people. Just get happy with you. Just get happy. The good news / the bad news, this is it. Like, this is it. Like, no, it's not one day, not next week, or next year, or when I get my degree, or when I buy a business, or when I get that certain job, or when I marry that hot chick. You know, I married the hot chick, but guess what? Life just goes on. She's still hot, but it's just, life still goes on. Thank you. Thank you very much. But we got to get happy today. We got to walk in the Spirit today. We've got to obey Jesus today. We've got to get out of the boat today. Not tomorrow. Today. Jesus. And the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him, they pooed their pants. No, they walked when Jesus, they saw him. They did. They go, it's a ghost! Oh! They're all panicking. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Peter, don't you love Peter? He's just gutsy. He just goes there. He doesn't worry about what anybody else thinks. He just spews it out. Jesus, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. So Jesus says, come. That's the one word. Isn't that good? Like he said to us, go. Come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Why? Peter, how come you've got a story about walking on the water? Because he got out of the boat. You know, most of us, we're just sitting there. It's like we're standing in the boat. I'll walk on the water, just make the boat disappear. Come on, God. Oh, God, I'm happy to walk on the water. I'm ready, God. Just make the boat disappear. God says no. Step out of the boat. We talked about it in church on Sunday, if you were there. Just walk across the room to somebody. Let's be the life of the party. Let's be the happiest person at work. Let's be the one that befriends somebody. We notice somebody that doesn't have friends, or somebody's on the outer at work or wherever it is. Let's be the one. Hey, do you want to have lunch? Do you want to have a coffee? Let's do something. Let's find ways to connect with people. I try and do it all the time. I've trained myself because I'm lazy like everybody. I like comfort zones. I like, my perfect holiday is sitting on a beach reading a book and not talking to anybody. I don't want, Jane wants to jump out of aeroplanes and climb mountains and bungee jump and whitewater raft. And I'm going, man, that's too much like hard work. I just want to read a book. So I have to, I've motivated myself, I trained myself, I look for ways to connect with people. Just walking through the shopping centre the other Saturday, and I saw a man, this very handsome man with All Blacks on his t-shirt. And All Blacks is rugby in Australia and New Zealand, and this great rivalry between Australia and New Zealand. So I just go, hey, All Blacks! And he turns around and says to me, hey, Pastor Shaun! I think, man, who is this guy? He's a prophet, he's got a word of knowledge. But it was Noel, and he just put my photo on the Facebook page, and that's how he knew who I was. All Blacks! All Blacks! Just yesterday at the lift, Jane and I have got a wonderful couple here in the resort, a Muslim couple who are here on holidays that we're becoming great friends with. And just yesterday, outside the lift, in 90 seconds, we just heard the whole life story and how they lived in Australia, they lived in Canberra for 4 years, he's in the army with the Malaysian army, he was in Canberra for 4 years, and then went to Melbourne for 2 years, and his master's down there. They've got 4 children, all live in Australia, once again. And I know all this about it in 90 seconds. We lived from the second floor to the ground floor, we know their whole life story. Why? Because you just got to go the ask. Here's the type, little. Could you just put up for me? Go the ask. 3 words. It's a new one. It's a different one. That's one of the sayings that we would have in our church. Is just go the ask. I have to pronounce it clearly because some people sometimes misunderstand what I'm saying. Go the ask. But we used to say, go the ask. Be bold. Just go the ask. Just ask people. Yes. Go the ask. I was preaching one day. Can I tell a naughty story? I'm preaching one day about God and how amazing He is, and how creative He is. And I said, look at how we breathe and everything. And God has designed the human body. It's incredible. And I said, look at our digestive system, how complex the digestive system is. And then I said, and look at the reproductive system and how incredible, and how you make babies. That's incredible. And I said, look at giraffes. It's amazing. And everybody's sitting there going, look at your. I said, and everyone's. I said, I said, look at giraffes. Giraffes. How God's made giraffes. So, look at giraffes. What is wrong with these people? I don't speak. Is there something wrong with my diction? I don't know. My diction. Anyways, go the ask. You started that, not me. Moving right along. And so then this morning at breakfast, I saw this lovely Muslim couple there again, and it's so easy. They're over there getting their eggs. I'm over here getting my nasi lemak, and it's so easy not to go the ask. It's so easy not to take 3 steps and say, hi, how are you this morning? It's so easy just to get my nasi lemak and just go back to the table. But friends bring friends to church and they get saved. That's how it works. That's the only way we're going to reach this city and reach this nation. I don't know about in Malaysia, but again, I'll tell you about Australia. What happens all the time is that churches spend thousands of dollars putting on these amazing productions and amazing guest speakers and to have amazing music and amazing outreach events, and as I said, spend thousands of dollars hoping to reach thousands of people, but they do the event and unchurched people there, maybe 1, 2, 3. Because evangelism or outreach or witnessing, call it what you like, it's got to be done corporately by the church, but it's got to be done individually by each one of us. It's a team effort. It's like the church exists to help the church exists to help me do my ministry, and my ministry of friendship exists to help the church grow the church. And together, it's powerful. But one without the other, it's useless. There's no fruit, and we're wasting our time. We've got to get out of the boat and go the ask. I shared on Sunday morning, I am a Christian because this guy, Frank Evans, he wasn't intimidated by this group of Australian Navy sailors all drinking beer, listening to AC/DC, going crazy and swearing and all this. But he wasn't intimidated. He walked across a camping ground just to say hello, just see what might happen. We could have told him, nick off, you idiot, or we might want to pick a fight or whatever. But he didn't care. He got out of the boat and walked across. Because, why? Love motivated. The love he'd received. He'd been a black belt, 5-dan karate, martial arts expert. He sat down next to me and he started telling me how he'd done all these things. He was covered in tattoos and he was big and tall and strong. He started sharing how Jesus had changed his life and that he'd never ever use violence ever again. So I said, stand up. And he stood up. And I just started going, just slapping him around the face. And all my friends went, Shaun, stop. And Frank stood there and said, no, let him go. And then after a few minutes I said, okay, I'll listen to you. And we sat back down and he started to share his life story and how Jesus had changed his life and had given his life to Christ. And we became such friends that night, believe it or not. And he risked. He took a risk. He was bold, he was gutsy, he went, he asked. And then he followed me up. But that wasn't the end of it. He'd ring me up, he'd take me for coffee, he'd buy me a meal, I'd be hung over somewhere, he'd pick me up and take me and get me breakfast. And then just this journey of about 8 months until one Sunday night in a Baptist church in Darwin. I was sitting in the middle of the church, Frank was right behind me, I remember, and the preacher preached as if he found all my letters and was reading them out loud about my life and who I was and what I believed, and then he gave his altar call to give my life to Christ. And I went up to the altar and just stood there and prayed this prayer. I started crying. And I wouldn't turn around, I wouldn't go back to my seat because I was so full of pride. I had sunglasses on, I had cigarettes up my sleeve, I'm trying to be tough because small guys try to be tough sometimes. And I wouldn't turn around. I didn't want anybody to see me crying. And finally the pastor said, sit down, time to sit down. I turned around and literally the whole church was crying because I'd been praying for Jane and I for 1 year. Every day the whole church prayed for us by name for 1 year. And the week before Jane gave her life to Jesus and this Sunday I gave my life to Jesus. Our life was turned upside down. Why? Because Frank just went the ask. He just walked across a camping ground. And that's what we need to do. And as I said, I try to motivate myself. I love being on aeroplanes. I love sharing with people on aeroplanes because they're there to start. Whether it's for 1 hour, 3 hours, 8 hours. They can't move. And what are they going to do? But again, we have to get gutsy and bold. You can go away from here and go back to work or where you live tomorrow. And you can do one of two things. And both are truth. Like, you can tell your friends, oh, I just went for a holiday down Malacca. It was lovely. That's true, but it's not the truth. Or you go back and tell your friends, I went to this amazing church camp. There was this crazy man there from Australia, and we learned about Jesus and the power of the Holy Ghost, and it was awesome. The people at work will go, really? Tell me more. We're going to get excited about what we're doing and talk about, hey, it was amazing. It was church. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. My friends and the things that you love about your church and love about this weekend, and they're the things that we've got to share with people. And just put it out there. Doesn't matter what they say. Doesn't matter, what is our reputation? Is it going to be the blood of Jesus? Or is it going to be that I'm so cool? We want to be seen as cool? Or do we want to be seen as friends of Jesus? Lovers of Jesus? I want to be known as a lover of Jesus. I was on a plane recently. And I'm walking up to I don't like queues, I don't like lining up. I often just wait to be the last person to get on the plane. So I did this, and I'm walking towards the back, and I'm looking, the plane is full, there's an empty seat, and I look, and here's this guy that I'm going to sit next to. He was scary. Mohawk, leather, every piece of skin was either tattoos or piercings. Every bit of his skin, tattooed everywhere. So I sit next to this guy, sit next to him. Again, I have a choice in that split second. I decide I'm going to take authority. I'm going to control this situation. I'm going to be the boss of the situation, the circumstance. So I just look at this guy and I say, hey, you coming or going? Because everybody's on a plane, they're coming or going, aren't they? He says, I'm going home. He says, I said, what have you been doing? He says, I come to Coffs Harbour. And he says, the best tattoo artist in Australia is here in Coffs Harbour, my friend. And he said, I come up here and get all my tattoos done. I said, well, what have you done? He starts showing me what he's had done. I'm talking, I'm asking him about his tattoos. He's coming alive. I'm imagining probably nobody ever asks about his tattoos. It's such a personal, private thing, people don't, but also, what does this mean? He's going, oh, this is about my family, this is about my brother, this is somebody who died, this means this, and wow, that's awesome, rah, rah, rah. Then he says to me, so what are you doing? Again, it's a split second. I'm going to Sydney to see my daughter. Here I am. but I'm going to Sydney to see my daughter and to go to the Presence Conference with Pastor Phil Pringle. So I choose where I'm going to share. And so I'm going to visit my daughter in Sydney. I tell him that I'm going to the Presence Conference for C3 Church with Pastor Phil Pringle. You just put it out there, see what they're going to do with it. And so he says to me, my whole family, they all go to Christian Life Centre in Penrith. So, ka-ching, he's a backslidden Christian. I know, straight away. So we start talking away, we're talking more things, and then finally I said to him, so what? So actually I started talking, I said, what do you do? And I started talking, I'm the pastor, and we're talking about that, and then he says, he used to be a cabinet maker, making kitchens, and but now he's also a tattoo artist himself. So we're talking away, and finally I said to him, so why do you think God has got you working in a tattoo parlour? Now some people wouldn't think like that, but that's just the way I think. And he just about was going to manifest it, and then he just turned in an instant, like into a different person. He goes, well, I'm sort of like a counsellor. He says, so many people come in to have the tattoos, so many young people. He says, tattooing's so intimate. And he actually starts holding my hand. He's a pretty tough guy. He's holding my hand and my heart. And he's on the plane, he's going, tattooing is really intimate. He says, you're there for hours doing all the work. You get really close to people. And they share all their life problems. And I'm like a counsellor to all these young people. I said to him, no wonder God has got you working in a tattoo parlour. And then the plane lands in Sydney, and he jumps up, and we get our bags off the lockers, and he goes to grab me, and finally shakes my hand, and goes, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's one of the best conversations I've ever had. And he's gone. And I didn't see him. He didn't get his name, didn't do anything. He's gone. That was about 4 or 5 years ago, actually. Just a couple of months ago, I was sitting down with a friend who works also with me, and now I'm working with the Christian charity called Compassion. And I was sitting down having coffee with a gentleman that works there, and we're just sharing our life story. And this guy says to me, I said, where'd you grow up? He says, I grew up in Penrith. He says, my whole family goes to Penrith Christian Life Centre. And so I'm thinking to myself, this little voice says, ask him if he knows a man who used to be a cabinet maker and now he's a tattoo artist. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to ask him that. That's like asking, do you know somebody who used to be an astronaut and now they're a dictator of a third world country or something? It's like, it's just bizarre. So if this finally won't leave me, just ask him. So fine. He said, you don't happen to know a guy from Penrith Christian Life Centre who used to be a cabinet maker and now is a tattoo artist? He goes, oh yeah, that's my brother-in-law. I'm going to see him in 2 weeks. He goes, he's a wild man. He says there's twins. His twin brother is assistant pastor at the church, but he's involved with all the bikies. He does tattoos and all this. He's like a gangster. He's so far from God. And I said to him, I want to tell you, he's not that far from God. And I told him the whole story about what happened. I said, you're going to see him in 2 weeks. I said, you need to be praying for him because God's doing something in his heart. And still, the story keeps going. And this is the great thing, is that when we connect with people like this, we become part of their story. Like Frank with me, it was an 8-month journey that Frank just hung in there with me. I've got a friend in Australia who I met nearly 18 years ago. His name's Johnny Dick. He was the drummer with big bands around. You wouldn't know that. John Paul Young Band, you would know. The Love Is in the Air. So he was the drummer. So Love Is in the Air had the famous drum beat. And then that #1 hits all over the world. And I go to his house, he's got photos of him playing in front of 200,000 people, gold records and everything. He's got around, he's got drum kits that he's been given by all these drum companies, and he's got so much stuff, and he's been so famous, but now he's 72 years of age. He's never been married. He has no wife, no children, no brothers and sisters, no family, no friends, nobody except me. And him and I would go to the movies once a month. And he calls it God and Satan going to the movies. I'm not sure which one's which. I hope he thinks I'm God. But we just go to the movies. And when we started, you know, if there's a scale like of becoming a Christian, he was like minus 100 on the scale. And he'd be so embarrassing. And he'd swear at people. And he's so obnoxious. And he's so full of himself. I think because he's been so famous and had so much money. But now he's really poor and got nothing. He's bankrupt. But he's just still arrogant. And I'd be at places with him and I'd just walk out. Because he was so embarrassing. But I'd bring him up again. John, you coming to the movies? Yes, let's go. And I've seen him over about 18 years from minus 100. Now he's about minus 5. And he rings up. And he's crying because I'm leaving Coffs Harbour and going to Melbourne. And he's crying on the phone because I'm leaving him. And he rings up for me to pray for him. And he's had to go to hospital. And he rings up, will you pray for me, please? And this journey has taken like 18 years. And it's been painful. But so what? We lay down our life. And Jesus left heaven to come down to rescue us and die on a cross. Whatever little thing we do doesn't even compare at one iota to that of us walking across the room, going across the road to the neighbour, inviting somebody, being led of the Holy Spirit, having Jesus' eyes to see people in our world that are hungry for God, close to God, needing God. One of the things I like to do, I just like to talk to people. If anyone's got a name badge on, I say their name. I'm doing it all over the resort. This morning I went up to the Holiday Inn to get coffee there because they've got better coffee than here. And Zacky's on the front door there. How do I know? Because I read his name tag. He said, "Hey Zacky, how you doing?" He's the doorman over the Holiday Inn, and now every time he sees me, "Hey Shaun, how are you?" Introduce myself to people. That's what we have to do, just to get to know people. I love talking to waiters and waitresses. Serving on your table. Some people try to be snobby. Hey, just put the water there. Don't get. No. Garçon, bring me some more toast, please. Come on. They're so rude and arrogant. I like to find out their name and talk to them. And particularly in Coffs Harbour because it's a holiday destination. So most people would have heard of Byron Bay. Have you heard of Byron Bay? It's a famous holiday destination. So Coffs Harbour is 2 hours from Byron Bay. Very similar. So we have so many students and backpackers come to Coffs Harbour from all over the world, and they get jobs. They might stay for 1 month or 2 months in Coffs Harbour, surf all day, lay on the beach, and then work in restaurants at night, waiters. And I just always talk to them, because everyone's got a story. That's why I love talking to people. Everybody has got an interesting story. And they'll have an accent. I'll say, "Hey, where you from?" Start talking. And you know, I'll ask them, I'll say to them, you know, strike up this conversation. "What are you doing? Where you been?" And I'll say to them, "Hey, you're on this great journey around the world. Are you also on a spiritual journey?" I'd be like honestly, 9 times out of 10, they'll go, "Yes, I am, you know. I went to so-and-so and I slept in a teepee and I'm hugging dolphins and I'm kissing crystals," and they're, you know, trying to find ways and new age ways. They're trying to find ways to God. They've been in Tibet or they've been somewhere. They're chasing the Dalai Lama around the planet or doing something. They are. They're all just people everywhere are hungry and searching. And so I remember we were actually in Byron Bay at the Veranda Bar, one of my favourite restaurants in the world, and we're sitting there having dinner. It was with the Clancys, and this handsome young waiter is talking to us, and I'm talking to him. He's got his name. He's from America, and I just, "Yeah, how you doing?" I said, "You're on this big journey around the world. Are you on a spiritual journey?" He goes, "Yes." He sits down at the table next to us. He goes, "Are you on a journey?" I said, "Yeah, we're Christians." And we start talking, and he's just talking. I said, "Fine, you're going to get into trouble off your boss. Take these plates to the kitchen and then come back again." So he does, and he comes back down and he sits again down and he's asking us more questions about this, and what do I think about God, and what about life after death, and what about reincarnation. I said, "Quickly, take some more, go sit at the table over there, get them plates, take them to the kitchen, then come back here again." So he just bang, back down to that table. The point of the story is people everywhere are hungry for truth and reality and the power of God in their lives. But it's up to us. Jesus has done all that he's going to do. It is finished. He said to us, "Go into all the world, preach the gospel." Just get out of the boat. Go bold. How come you got so many stories about witnessing? Because I witness. How come you got so many stories about praying for miracles? Because you prays for miracles. What sort of stories do you guys have? What sort of stories do you want? Yesterday we talked about desire. What are those things that we desire in our heart? Why don't we get the keyboard player back up? We're going to go to one more scripture. Let's just have some nice music in the background. 1 Corinthians chapter 14. Wonderful. 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 1. It says, pursue. Pursue. It's good, isn't it? Pursue. What are you pursuing? Because we're all pursuing something. Challenging word, isn't it? Follow. No. For translation, follow. I like pursue. But yeah, follow's okay. What are you following? What are we chasing after? What are we pursuing? Pursue love and desire spiritual gifts, but especially that you may prophesy. For he who speaks in the tongue does not speak to God, for no one understands him. However, in the Spirit he speaks mystery. Verse 3, but he who prophesies speaks edification, exhortation, and comfort or consolation to men. Prophecy. It's a really easy thing to do. It edifies. Words of edification. Words of, back to where we were, exhortation. Words of consolation or comfort. I want each of us this morning to go bold, and go the ask, step out of the boat. I want us to close our eyes in prayer, and I want us to, and you don't have to close your eyes, you might want to look around. Looking around is okay. I want you to go to somebody in the room, somebody you may know well, maybe it's somebody you don't know very well, but just say, because often we'll have, I've always wanted to say to this person. I've always wanted to say to this person. And just say it. A word that edifies them, that exhorts them, that'll bring them comfort. And it's so easy. I could just say a word, I could just look at all of your beautiful faces and just say something that comes to me from God. Now look at this beautiful man here. Every time I look at him, I just sense God is going to do something. God is going to do a miracle. I don't know what it is. But I just sense, don't be discouraged. Don't give up. God is there. God knows you. God sees your face. God loves you. God says he's proud of you. God says that you're his son. God says he believes in you. God says he's coming through for you. He loves you. You don't have to kiss everybody. But I'm a bit like that. I'm just a bit emotional. mean, if we can't do it in this room with one another, how are we going to do it out there in the world? And this is what the world wants to hear. They don't want to hear some big sermon. They don't want to hear some... They just want friends. Everyone's got a story. It's amazing. Can we do that? Yeah. This last 5 minutes? Oh, Jesus, thank you, God. Father, we just thank you, Lord, for the presence of the Holy Spirit here right now. Father, we want to be your people that walk in the Spirit, that get out of the boat, that were bold in Jesus' name. Bold with mercy, bold with love, bold with grace, bold with healing. That we're not going to be ashamed of the gospel. Everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Everyone wants to see revival, but nobody wants to preach the gospel. Everybody wants to change the world, but no one wants to love anybody. Listen.